So for historical and social impact of media, we will be looking into propaganda and its influence and how it relates to PR. Funny enough, Freud, whose ideologies are a lot of times like reference, is nephew is Edward Bernays, which is the father of PR. And so we kind of see a lot of the influence of, you know, uncle and nephew and how their ideologies are able to influence and create what is PR now in the shape of propaganda. And so to start off, what do I think about propaganda? I believe propaganda is bad because it is inherently deceitful, as the true intention is to manipulate and skew perception. Although some may argue that is harmless, I feel as though there has been propaganda that's seen through just like the world wars and how their impact has led to more harm than good. And so, although we all have free will and choice and even certain liberties and rights, I feel as though intentions made by people who create propaganda or even PR, like for Brene, um, I feel as though it's just more so negative. And so I feel as though with that, PR is kind of the rebranded product of propaganda, where those negative perceptions and connotations of propaganda are kind of flipped into more so acceptable and positive things through PR. And so I believe that is the way it is because there is the main distinction between PR and propaganda, and that is the ethical requirements that are upheld by PR professionals. And so an example would be not causing harm to others or just upholding like corporate social responsibility. Just there's things in place to not get PR to the level of propaganda that can lead to the negative aspects of it. A quote that kind of stuck out to me from the reading that we had was, "You have taken over the job of creating desire and have transformed people into constantly moving happiness machines, machines which have become the key to economic progress." And then with that, we kind of see that Bernays is able to get PR in a more heightened and ingrained way and within our society through how he persuaded President Eisenhower in, getting him to think about how promoting fear of communism, even though it's irrational, and we see irrationality pop up with Freud and, with his ideologies and how even though it's irrational, it would drive a greater commitment to American spending. And I feel as though with that, that kind of made um, propaganda more enticing, and that enticement is what PR is able to manifest as now. And so, kind of just looking at Freud's impact on today's media, just emphasize that Freud ideas influence Americans into needing capitalism. And so, the first quote being, "We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, and our ideas suggested largely by men who we have never heard of. It is they who pull the wires that control the public mind." I feel like this really encapsulates just what everything is in our modern day media. We all are individuals, but we all do have influence outside of ourselves. And it's like a lot of times when I think about trends, I'm like, where did that come from? And it's because we kind of do all have, you know, we're influenced a lot by what we see, whether it's because we've curated our own algorithm or we are within groups of our own niche, we are able to influence ourselves amongst that. And so this quote kind of makes me think about how things outside of like PR and like molding our perceptions of things to influence us to buy things can be seen outside of traditional PR practices or spaces like in schools, even work and just like any place where we're motivated by influences outside of ourselves because within every group there are influences and with that, there are ways to cater to that. And so the next quote that stuck out to me was, "Freud believed that newborns have no ability to distinguish their individual identity from the outside world, and humans have a subconscious yearning to return to that undifferentiated state." And so that's kind of what we see a lot with like PR is that um that whole like influence of being within certain groups, whether it's like your religion, your music taste, and stuff like that. Like we all have like a yearning to come back to that like state of just like, group thinking. And I feel as though that is often seen with like how group thinking is kind of very prevalent within our society, as like the popular and like the most loudest voice will always trump. And, we don't take nicely to things or people who stray outside of our norms. And even if they aren't doing it intentionally, like I'm thinking about like disabled people, they are kind of like ostracized and shunned because they threaten the illusion of oneness that is so powerful and gratifying with this next quote. And then they say that the instinct for protecting the herd against the intruder is very powerful, and outsiders are a threat to survival. And I feel like that is kind of maybe the biggest force that pushes our need for like PR and even propaganda, because it really is just trying to make a survival of a certain ideology, and someone like an outside influence is going to threaten that. And I feel like that can be seen so much within like media, like especially like with TikTok, and how like everyone has their own nuanced takes. And if one group of people share one thought and there's an opposition, it kind of creates like this push. And so going back to kind of just like PR a little bit and how like Freud impacts PR, especially within our media, with this quote, Brene didn't simply sell products, but capitalism itself. PR and capitalism intertwine. It's just a constant cycle of having to keep getting things and buying things. It just makes me think about how the crisis in Congo, and how we're getting Apple products, and at the cost of these people not getting proper wages. Their work conditions are terrible. But then it's like, with this quote says Bernays foresaw the enthusiasm that now creates the release of every incrementally modified Apple product. This just kind of pushes this image of how like capitalism PR works, because it's like every year we get a new Apple product, and people who, we don't need a new phone, but because it's the newest product, and we're, seeing constantly like advertisement for it, we are more so influenced to buy it, even though, we're putting people like the people in Congo who are, mining the materials to make these things at risk. And so, another example that was brought up that I kind of want to talk about was the whole, the Lucky Strike cigarettes, and how Brene was able to link Lucky Strike cigarettes with power and with women, with like women's liberty, as branding it as torches of flame. This kind of makes me think of like the modern day version of that is just like how vapes are kind of like promoted in society, with like, disguising the nicotine taste with like fruity flavors. Like each, pen has like a cute different name. And then it's like even how we are smoking it is like molded into ways that are just like different. And I feel as though like creating a multi-dimensional way of repackaging something that's like harmful, like smoking, is kind of just like smoking within vapes is kind of like the modern day version of the whole Lucky Strike cigarette thing with Brene. And so with a movie example, I thought of Leave the World Behind, where this movie came out in December of 2023, and it made a lot of buzz just because it spoke on things that a lot of people were talking about and that are kind of considered like conspiracies. But the message of the movie follows an apocalyptic theme of technology being a hindering force, and nature kind of taking Trump and taking back what we kind of destroyed in a way. And so I thought this movie was kind of propaganda-ish, as it garnered a lot of buzz, as the film left many confused and coming up with conspiracies that have been circling around, and most importantly, how propaganda plays a huge role in our media and just like the underlying messages. And so the themes follow like technology being a hindering force, like we see that in the image where the Tesla car crash scene. We rely so much on technology, but like when it's gone, it's very destructive to ourselves. And then it also speaks on like messaging of war themes and like propaganda, where the leaflet falling scene in the movie, where it was kind of just like it's kind of remnants of like World War or even now in Palestine where leaflets were being dropped to the people. So it's kind of that's a sort of propaganda-ish type of thing. And then we see nature, coming back and taking over in the deer invasion scene. And they also kind of like center this around like how we kind of need to not lead as individuals. With each like character and their family, they all, wanted to make sure that they were all okay, but they realized that they had to work with each other to be able to understand what's going on. And so I feel like going back to like how like we are more so group thinkers, and I feel like that's the main way how propaganda and PR is able to work, because we can't stray outside of that group thinking, because we inherently, or what's presented to us is that we can't survive. And so with that, propaganda's influence on me, I feel like it's just though anything I see on the media, like social media, like Pinterest or something, like I feel like the trend with like the bows in the hair, it kind of came out of nowhere, but it was able to influence me because I saw it through like TikTok, Pinterest, IG Reels, stuff like that. So I feel as though things within like fashion are able to influence me and other people because of how like at least now how quickly we go through it. But I guess the main thing that I really see with propaganda and influencing on me is Twitter. I'm a pretty avid Twitter user, and a lot of times I'm glad that I kind of have some type of digital literacy or like media literacy where I'm able to kind of like fact check on my own. But I realize that for some people that is not the case, and what they see is what they believe, and I feel like that is inherently harmful, what despite the message. And so I feel like that's kind of a space where I see that a lot within my own sphere. And so, yeah.